Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Wednesday, November 27th meeting of the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development to order. I'm Councillor Jeff Bawadi. I'm the committee's chair. With me this afternoon, we have Councillor John Orlico, Councillor Matt Allard, and I believe Councillor Lukes will be joining us momentarily. From the public service, we have our senior committee clerk, Peter Prinsloo, and our chief financial officer, Tracy Graham. There are also a number of other folks in the public service that will be joining us on various reports. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Councillor Orlico, would you please move that the minutes of the meeting held on November 12th, 2024 be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We'll move into delegations. The first one up is David Grant. Is he in the waiting room?
He has just joined. He's connecting his audio and his video as we speak.
You don't see system slow?
It is a bit slow.
Yep. Usually the speakers are the crash.
Yes. Good afternoon, David. I see you've just joined us. It is your time to present to the committee. If you can go ahead, that'd be great.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello. Yes. Used to having a few seconds of warning. Thank you. And thank you for starting the meeting so promptly. As you may notice in my written submissions, on topic 1, population increases. At first, this might seem to be a federal problem. Their policies and lawmaking have resulted in our having more people than we can find homes for. It is good that these numbers are here. It raises a few questions. 1.1, will ward boundaries be adjusted? We know this happens provincially and federally. Can't remember this happening on city elections. And a few of these ridings have more voters than average. And will large infill buildings be built, and will they be providing more equity in these boundaries, these wards? 1.2, as thousands more homes are built, will sewer capacity be ready for them? This is a finance issue. I believe the southern area southwest area has as many homes as the sewer system will support, and that there's a large amount of money possibly needed there. So that affects this budgets and this group. And if taxes cannot be collected on residential mega projects because some owners have been given TIF deals, how will you pay for the infrastructure needs created? So if you create 1,000 new homes and there's not much tax income coming in for 5 years, that also has a bearing on the function of the Finance Committee. Major projects. I read that you must now have a Major Capitals Project Advisory Committee. It's probably a good idea. On topic 2, it can do more than, theoretically, it can do more than just track expenses. It can lay out a plan to help with the budget shortfall at the moment. There may be some items that can be delayed, the spending can be delayed on without dire consequences. If there's low-hanging fruit that could be delayed, so that the city does not run out of money, that would be good. Replacing thousands of nearly new water meters was always a waste of our money. Replacing the oldest, but not those recently replaced, is a better idea. Removing nitrogen from sewage, again, this battle has been lost long ago, many years ago, was always worse than a waste of money. Promotes the blooms of the worst algae, but the major project review could be used as a tool to stave off the current shortfall because the cupboard is pretty much bare. Anyway, and I laud your efforts in that direction of trying to cut costs and balance. Topic 7, it's good that spending has been so low so far on these meters. Since the city is out of money, and we've heard this from everywhere, and since these intrusive devices are not related to a core city business, it's sad to see that indefinite delay has not been offered to by the folks involved to the SBC Finance. Being able to collect very personal data on every home in the city does not mean less waste of water. For a new meter installed under this program to reduce a leak, the owner has to be informed and compelled to carry out repairs. We have no effective means to do so. Hopefully your audit team will test the new meter justifications and the functionality and warn you about anything that they are concerned about. Topic 11. I hear murmuring. Topic 11. Are we broke? The city is nearly out of money. Before the 2022 election, it was nearly out of money. 2 years ago, the emergency fund had been nearly spent on nice to have things. None of them essential or emergencies. It's easy to see how this happened. Spending creeps up, but income does not. This tragic situation has happened to many, many residents. So many are so out of money themselves that increases taxes on them will do real harm. There are many families who are very short and for whom increases in taxes passed down through rent can do real harm. In the interest of not ruining lives, I'm asking you to choose the only viable path you can. Create a plan to delay major spending. Draw a line between essential core city services like fire, water, and police. This would probably also result in multi-year delays on some topics. Buying shiny new vehicles for so many staffers has a cost. And I heard your chair on CBC explaining that exactly. Handing tax dollars to every outreached hand has a cost too. Please make emergency changes and follow through on your next budget. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, David. Any questions for David Grant? Okay, you're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good
All
luck.
right, David.
Yep.
Next up is Kelly Ryback.
Thank you, councillors. I don't envy you. Major part of the problem is what you've inherited over 8 previous years of budgeting shortfalls and increasing expenses. And as a taxpayer, when I see that, I could be facing a more than 3.5% tax increase, it bothers me when I continue to see improper budgeting and waste and poor performance. You're already going to be starting 2025 in the hole based on, with approval of taking from the financial stabilization reserve the $14 million. You're still $9 million short, which would be covered in 2025. If this does not pass, then you'll be starting with $23 million in the hole, in addition to a likely budget shortfall on 2025 snow clearing, where the city has always budgeted less than actual. You got to reinstate $2.1 million in the grant intake program, which is another large ticket item that, because of a recent decision, has to be accounted for. And as the previous delegate stated, a hard look at capital projects and items that are not deemed essential when we have a crumbling infrastructure and challenges with the water treatment plant and other items. It is concerning when I talk about waste or questionable expenses where there's an increase in expenses when things are so tight. And I'll just, a few examples being, I just took a sample of 17 chief officers, directors, and managers who are likely out of scope. And looking at the compensation disclosure year over year from 22 to 23, and they averaged an 8% increase, which is beyond anything that's in a collective agreement. Just that set an example of 17 persons was almost $250,000 in increase in compensation. That a few other examples being in 2023, there's an increase in $400,000 for street cleaning. Through the several events I attend weekly, and I'm out late at night, even as late October, every week on arteries of Corridon and Portage Avenue and Roblin, there's street cleaning going on and the streets aren't dirty. But I'd encourage you, in order to make up for what you're asking for and to have a chance to even replenish the FSR, that there are cuts that need to be made. And one would be that you return back $400,000 increase in street cleaning when there's so much that wasn't required. I've spoke to as a delegate in the past regarding beautification. As nice as they are, when we have intersections with 8 to 11 flower pots And it's an over $4 million budget. It's not essential. I've been a delegate in the past talking about excessive sanding on small residential streets. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars could be saved if that recommendation was made? Then going to the capital projects, with the state of the Canadian dollar and $130 million for water meters, take a hard look at that. And others, if it's not core street renewal and repair and sidewalk street renewal repair, then what else could be delayed or cut? It's even concerning when I look at mayor and ward expenses and the councillors in attendance. Your expenses seem to be somewhat in line, but if we're to encourage cycling and taking transit, and last month the mayor's office spent $4,500 on free parking, when another example being, you received an increase in your ward allowance so that you could increase EA's compensation and you can have remote offices. But this year, when one councillor spent $10,400 on furniture, $5,000 to a property management company, and then $2,400 a month prepaid 6 months of rent for over $14,000, as a taxpayer, those kinds of numbers are concerning. I respect, if you felt that you need to pay your EAs more, it was concerning that in one raise to the next, it was 40 to 50% as opposed to being done over time to get them to a value that you thought was the case. Where I see an EA going from $2,000 bi-weekly to $2,800 to $3,000 in one fell swoop. That's hard to take. That I think one thing to look at, you've made commitments on rent and additional staff, but not all that $850,000 that was increased in your ward allowance is being spent. That's something that needs to be clawed back. Based on the situation we're in, there's some things that really shouldn't be taking place until we recover. Where that FSR needs to be at $80 million, in what time frame and what true hard decisions are going to be made to get to that point? That a true balanced budget is when in-year expenses equals in-year revenue, not taking from a stabilization reserve. And I spoke to the finance committee back in July of 2021 and identified this same kind of discussion. And in pandemic, there was too much spending on areas that should not have happened. And I'm coming this from a point of knowledge. I held a designation in disaster recovery. And the number one rule in pandemic is essential only. And that did not take place. And we're still paying for that today. Well, we don't have a pandemic right now, even though actually the number of infections is the same, but it's diluted and it's mutated. It's not as dangerous as it was back in 2020. But financially, we are in an emergency. And you've stated it yourselves that you've never seen it like this before. And I would also encourage you, this is time for a true forensic audit. That why our budget is not being met? Why are projects going overboard? Was the work necessary? Was it done on time at the proper expenses? And we truly need to look at performance and setting priorities. And there are small examples, but they all add up. When I look at just my neighborhood, exponentially, what is the impact financially to the entire city? When just this past summer, somebody cutting the grass at the Westwood Library had the blade set higher than the grass only to make sure they had their GPS tracking in line, because it's a neighbor that cuts the grass more often than the city does it for weed control and beautification outside of his own yard. That the previous time, which was 2 weeks earlier, decided not to cut it because it was fine and got in trouble because there was GPS tracking wasn't in place. So let's waste money by doing things we don't even have to be doing. And I'm also concerned when I see city crews, the street outside my house was resurfaced this year with asphalt. There was a lot of standing around. And when I look at a private contractor doing the work, less people doing the same job. So only these things could be addressed or identified in a forensic audit. But there are some really serious, I've heard that I've been in depth with this for 3.5 years. Anecdotally before that, And every year we see hard decisions, and truly, I don't see many hard decisions being made in that 3.5 year period. There's a lot of work that has to be done, not only to just get to a balanced budget, but to replenish that financial stabilization reserve. And there are things that have to be made, and some things need to be stopped and reconsidered in the future until that is made. And some items are just going to have to wait. Thank you.
So like questions?
Fair enough.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Moving into reports. Number one, population estimates by ward.
And here to speak to this item is Matt Dryberg,
Oh,
Senior
sorry.
Manager of.
The police chief is not here. Okay, there's a request of, he's coming apparently, and his time is very limited, so if,
In the round?
yeah.
Hi.
Oh, well, there he is.
Oh,
Never mind. Okay, so
There he is.
if you hold on one second, with the, clearance of the committee, if we're okay, if we hop on to,
sure.
report number 10. Hi, Art.
Good afternoon. Thank you for doing this for us. I do have a very important meeting at 2:00, so I really appreciate this. With Executive Director Kim Nicholson as well. We'd like to defer our item number 10 report to your next meeting if possible. We have done further review of our Q4 forecast, and everything looks good for us to be within budget for the year. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Defer.
Good work. Good news.
Good news.
Okay, any comments from, police board chair Luke Searwood?
Great work.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the move is to layovers at proper, thank you very much for coming, Art, and make sure
Thank
you
you.
get meeting.
Happy holidays.
Take care. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye. Thank you.
So that is the January 17th meeting.
Okay, so,
Item
Councillor,
number 10, is
Yep.
that it?
Move on. Say over item number 10 to January meeting.
okay, so moved, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you very much. Sorry about that, Matt.
That's okay.
I understand why,
You're well, you're where you are at. I wasn't thinking that.
You're really thinking it.
Okay.
Oh, how'd that
That
go?
way you're moaning.
How'd that go?
Hilarious.
Okay, joining us, in addition to Matt Dryberg, is Peter Marr, the research analyst from the Office of the CIO.
Excellent.
Thanks for having us. So this is an annual report that estimates the 2023 population estimates by ward. The crux of the report is the table on page 3, which provides the numbers by ward. I'll provide a few comments on the methodology that we used here. The method that we used is to calculate these is similar to what we had done in the past. We've apportioned the overall growth in population from 2022 to 2023 to each ward. First of all, based on new housing units in each ward, which we estimate using building permit data. We then take those that increase or decrease in housing units and multiply that by the average annual or the average amount of people in each housing unit, single family, multifamily, et cetera, that we get from Statistics Canada, and then we apply a vacancy rate. The one thing we did a little bit different this year. In the past, we've used a citywide vacancy rate for this. This year, we've kind of targeted a little bit more to use the vacancy rates by area that correspond to each area or each ward of the city, which has allowed us to for a slightly more precise estimate, or we think a more precise estimate. So whatever increases that aren't explained by that, we allocate this on a pro rata basis with amongst the wards, with the larger, faster growing wards receiving a greater pro rata share compared to smaller wards. So the results here are consistent, I think, with previous reports on this matter. Waverly West continues to be the fastest growing ward. St. Vital also a fast growing ward, as well as Old Kildonan. The numbers are here on page 3. The one comment I'll make, I guess, we expect to get numbers from Stats Canada for the 2024 estimates, the City of Winnipeg as a whole, early in 2025. So once we get those, we'll do this all again for 2024.
So 30,000 new Winnipeggers 1 year. That's
Yeah, it's pretty sizable,
pretty wild.
sizable. Happy to
Yeah,
take it.
Councillor Orlando?
I'm not sure if I dreamed it or read it. Did this report include the recent federal reduction in immigration?
So these are based on actual population estimates as of 2023. Our long-term projections do take into account those federal changes, or we've made some assumptions that
Okay.
immigration is going to slow to the levels that the federal government has indicated. So we can expect these overall increases to decrease, I think, in subsequent years.
Yeah. So where, I did read it, it was I think it was probably in the paper, 2 point something down to 1 point something on growth.
Yeah, yeah.
CMHC, I think.
Yeah, that was the conference board did that. That's consistent with our projections for
Okay.
24 and beyond. I think we're projecting 1.
Thank you much. Thanks for the data. Appreciate it.
And this doesn't include international students or anything like that, does it?
So it does to the extent that they're here as of July 1st. These are, so some of those international students will leave after the universities
So it does include them.
to the extent that they're here July 1st, yeah.
Well, and on census year, they have to be there on census day.
Right, right.
Because a lot of students will go home to stay
Right.
with their parents or
Right.
go to, so they're not here. They would get counted where they're, with their parents home.
Right. So then temporary visas and that's included too?
So to the extent that they were here and counted in July 1st, yeah.
So you're saying international students do a census?
That they would be counted, especially if they're living in a rooming house type environment where they're supposed to be,
They're supposed to fill out a census.
Or somebody fills it out, for them. If I have a tenant living with me, then I'm gonna make sure he fills it out. If he's a foreign one, I might just say, well, I've got some.
Sure. Could be gray area there.
Yeah, because it's a lot of it's voluntary.
Yeah, yeah, okay. What's the population of Brandon now? Do you know what the population of Brandon is?
Top of my head, I don't know.
No, we looked at it about 6 months ago. It was
Yeah.
I don't know, I have around
It was-
3,000.
low 50s.
No. Okay, and then I guess the question I have to the public service is, in the budget process, these numbers are taken into consideration on per capita funding and I don't know, for UFF for community centers, or how does that work?
Community centers is different. They've got different boundaries. So I'll have to do the same kind of calculation for that.
But these are to the extent the UFF formula has a per capita component, so past practice has been to use these estimates.
Right.
As basis to determine.
Yeah, basically it's the same methodology. I just use different boundaries.
Yeah, I have too many. Well, I mean, it's fast growth,
It's
right?
very good.
Like it's lots happening. There was nothing there when I started. So
Yeah.
anyways, thank you very much for all the work you do. You crunch numbers amazingly from Stats Canada. So I really just want to thank you publicly
Better you than me.
on the
Yeah,
record.
absolutely.
Yeah, you're a wizard
Appreciate
at it.
it.
So
Yeah,
bravo.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to really do it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No,
Councillor, you're correct to move that.
I'd like to move this.
Thank you. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Okay.
Major capital projects. Danny.
Councillor Luke, sorry, you're asking those per capita questions because you have the biggest ward.
Yeah, I gotta support the people. I always will. Back at Ryback's questions, like
Rec center.
whatever. Yeah, it's still a concept.
Hello, sir.
Good afternoon, councillors. So, as you know, today is the Water and Waste Show, so there's a number of reports before you on the 2025 proposed. I guess the couple things to note, you've got two new projects, so the Pembina Highway Overpass, Abinodi-Mikana Rehabilitation, and the Armstrong Combined Sewer Relief coming out of Water and Waste. And one other note, the North District Police Station, you approved to cease reporting last month. We just had a timing issue getting it in the system, so we'll remove it going forward. And that's all I got for you today.
Okay.
Okay, so just hold on here. Let's talk about the, where did you see the bridge? Which, I don't see it on here.
The fourth one on the,
I'm gonna-
on 2025 proposed.
What page is it on?
Page 7.
Oh, it didn't make that chart. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong chart. Okay. So you don't have a price tag on that yet?
We, not in front of me, no, it, geez, I should have that, I apologize. It's in the forecast coming through the budget. I
Right,
don't have that before me though.
right, okay, so, okay, all right. So we're gonna hear an update on that in May, is what you're saying? Okay. Okay, good.
All right,
We're good.
So I will make a motion to move the, recommendation that the schedule be approved.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Centerport South and sewer servicing, water and sewer servicing.
Okay, the next 5 agenda items are Water and Waste Department reports. Today we have Tim Shanks, Director of Water and Waste, Cynthia Weed, Manager of Engineering, Lucy Squarick, Manager of Finance, and Zui Doan, Project Manager.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, as you said, we've got a bunch of reports in a row here, and some extra staff here to help present the last report there. But we'll start off with Centerport South, and Cynthia, you can take it away.
Sounds great. So thank you for having us. Centerport South construction, if you've driven by, it's alive and well.
That's what I'm gonna ask.
Yes, there's a lot happening there. We've got 3 out of our 4 main construction projects are in flight right now. So for this project in this reporting period, we've spent $1.2 million out of a total of 4.2 million. So we're still in the early days of the project. Substantial completion for the project has been revised to the 3rd quarter of 2026. And that was a decision that really had to be made because there was a lot of risk with the higher groundwater and we had some creek or stream crossings, rail crossings. So that was basically a contractor request so that they actually had the time to build this properly. In terms of what we've done this past quarter, we had a ground blessing with the first contractor at the site, which was really nice and attended by the city, the contractor, and a number of representatives. This was located near the burial mounds that are in St. James. The consultants have continued to work on the design and the development of the 4 key projects. And like I mentioned, all 4 have now been awarded. 2 were awarded during this reporting period, 2 subsequent. And a number of them did come in significantly under budget, or 1 came significantly under budget. The other 3 were really plus or minus a little bit. 1 was under, 2 were just slightly above. But overall, we're batting under, which is really exciting. In terms of, key risks, I did mention the revised schedule already. So that is something that we're going to continue monitoring really closely and just making sure we're working with the contractors and staying on top of any issues that they may run into. And there was one financial one that's come up. So in July, the interceptor contractor notified us that they'll be making a claim for extras due to higher groundwater. So that was something that we noticed after the first 2 contracts went out. So we were able to mitigate that risk from the other 2 contracts by including an allowance. But we are reviewing the claim from that contractor right now to evaluate that claim. And that is it. Yeah, I think did I miss something?
No, you touched on this. I just wanted to add a little bit of detail because we did talk about it a little bit at the Water and Waste Committee when we awarded these contracts. When you mentioned that some of these had come in under the interceptor contract came in substantially at 34% under the estimate, which is great. That's a combination of just the market conditions at the time, but also the proponent was aggressively pursuing some work in the province. So that was good. We would benefit of that. The other 2 contracts that came in under were like 1% under, 3% under, and the last one was 4% over. But we're very happy to see that at least for these projects in this area, this type of work seemed to be kind of coming down to more reasonable accuracies with estimates and the at the risk of being accused of an optimist, I'm hoping that the crazy times are behind us now, at least for the short term. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Well, that's a headline, 30% under budget. Headline, that's a headline.
It won't be.
It won't be, but that's good news. Okay. What does force main? What does that mean?
Force main, that is basically a sewer pipe that is pressurized. So you have a pump that's pushing the sewage through as opposed to flowing by gravity. We would,
Yeah, yes, like it's pumped sewage. The difference, we talk about feeder mains and force mains.
oh, I see.
Right.
A
Yes.
feeder main is water, drinking water. So
Right.
that's a pressurized, large regional water main is called a feeder main. Whereas force main is pumped sewage. Right now, so
And it's this, so I was on Sturgeon the other day. I was out at Centerport and I came back down Sturgeon. Is that what's going on Sturgeon?
Yes.
In and around
Yes,
that
we have
area?
the feeder main. That was the first contract that went. I believe the lift station is just starting. And I do have, and the force main is actually in construction as well. And the interceptor should start shortly.
Yeah, I thought that might be what it is. So
Mhm.
that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have 4 contracts going there very shortly.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm interested in the groundwater issue. We experienced some in the St. Boniface with the Norwood Pool. Is this something that's this phenomenon happening across the city, or does it depend on where?
You know, that is a good question. I can speak to the location specifically, and I know we have been monitoring that location since 2017, 2018, and it is the highest they have ever seen. It's significantly higher. I'm not sure about the rest of the city though.
Do we do that across the city? Is there a program? Do we?
like monitor groundwater? Well, I mean, I think this is more so, just for context, like when, most of the holes we dig are shallower than things that we talk about here. Like the lift station or the interceptor sewer has to be very deep to intercept the gravity flow before we pump it to the pumped pressurized pipes. So these are deeper excavations that would see more challenges with groundwater kind of as a baseline. So it's not in every place where we're excavating to this depth. I guess it's probably
That you would run into the issue. Yeah.
so whether or not it's a widespread issue or just in this specific geographic area, we don't have a lot of underground infrastructure in this area. This is greenfield, I guess. So there wouldn't have been a good baseline. We did do some monitoring, but I'm not sure how far back it goes really. So
Yeah.
all we know is it's higher than we expected it to be with this work in that area.
Well, it's 2 now that I can recall where it's higher than expected. So that doesn't make a trend, but appreciate it's not. Anyhow,
Okay,
thank you for that.
very much.
I can move this report.
For the question, you can move it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. New bed. It works.
Done. And if we can, Cynthia can provide an overview of this as well.
Great. So the Headworks project is continuing to progress very well. In this reporting period, we've spent 17.5 million. This represents 60% of our amended budget. So this one is over halfway. We also approved 13 milestones in this reporting period. So it's a milestone base. So when they meet a certain, target, they'll get paid for that target. In terms of schedule, we're currently at about 69% of the schedule, and we do have a completion date of March 2026. The main project, so the Headworks, Power Supply and Headworks project it encompasses like the big Headworks project and then a few ancillary projects. So in terms of the big project, the design is nearly complete. We've received all the issued for construction drawings now, and they're just in final review. And in terms of construction, we got a lot of our tunneling work done. We're preparing for one more tunnel. And a lot of the above ground construction has continued on a number of the different process buildings. So we have like grit removal buildings, we've got standby generator buildings, lots of different lots of different buildings. And we've also had significant work progress on the main control building, which will wind up being the headquarters for the control for all the sewage treatment plants. So that's kind of a neat fact. We're also continuing to work with our insurers and the contractor to determine the coverage that we can get for the Northwest Interceptor failure. Subsequent to this report, we have been advanced almost $2 million for the first payment while we continue those negotiations. And this gets then becomes part of our project contingency again. Some of the other contracts that fall under this umbrella here is the DCS migration. So that has some programming and user interface development that's continuing, and wiring for the operator workstations has been completed. The primary clarifier upgrades are getting close to having the design modifications finished, and then that will go to tender towards the end of the year. And the last bigger one, which is the UV upgrade, which is, so UV is our tertiary, kind of the finishing, polishing for the wastewater. Those upgrades will go to tender hopefully early January. We have been audited by the city auditor retained an external auditor, KPMG. And we've been working very closely with them, and that should be coming. That's for the North End upgrades as a whole, I should mention, not just Headworks. That will be complete towards the end of the year or early next year when it'll be done. And in terms of our risks, we have been able to close out one of our risks. We had an agreed pricing contract for our motor control centers, we had an estimated amount that we were using for the contract because we have one contractor that we can use. So the contractor bid based on that, and then our subsequent the price went up. So we've had to work with the contractor to cover those additional costs. And we just have there's no new risks, but two ongoing ones. And one relates to the additional claim they've put in for a change in market conditions that we've seen over the last number of years. And of course, we need to retender some of the projects that I mentioned earlier, the UV and the primary clarifiers. So we're just waiting for those to come in and close so we can kind of wrap up this project.
I'm just gonna add, that was the last.
Yeah.
So I was just gonna add, is something that kind of gets lost in the mix here when we talk about Headworks is how it relates to the second project, the biosolid, like the digester capacity. And then we were trying to clarify that in our recent report to council on the biosolids capacity. But the Headworks, there are stuff that are part of the building that's being constructed here will help with digester capacity. If you think about it, we keep saying the word Headworks. It's at the front end of the plant. There's a grit screening. It's where the sewage enters the whole process. And as we improve the screening there to remove grease and fats and oils and other stuff, it will help with the treatment process down the line and help with digestive capacity. So I just want to make sure that's not lost in the mix. This is something that does help us with our ultimate capacity issues.
Let me start with a quick question here. There's been some reports. We were walking even from the parking garage. We saw that there was a project coordination meeting for maybe phase 2. We know that there was always some concern that different contractors are going to be dealing with what used to be phases 1, 2, and 3. We know they have titles now, but and also media reports of one particular contractor with legal action. Obviously, it's between the courts. Don't say anything that's compromising, but can you tell us what's being done to deal with coordination of the various parts of the project, and concerns that perhaps you have the right resources in place to do this?
I'll preface that with the project chartering session that you're speaking of for project 2 for biosolids. We did hold that last week. That's a kind of industry best practice, not really kickoff meeting, but more of a shared goals, identifying communication channels, commitments to different parts of the project charter, being the foundation of how we're going to deliver the project. So that's a large, project related meeting that we did one for Headworks as well. Sort of a team building, I guess, but it kind of reiterates all the proponents' agreements. And when I mean proponents, I mean there's obviously the contractors we have involved, but also our advocate engineers, our partners at Veolia, legal services, purchasing, lots of different parties that will be involved in the delivery of that project. So it's kind of a strategy session and a kind of commitment to shared goals. Like I said, it's done on very, very large projects. So this isn't prompted by any external concern or something. This is how we kick off large projects. So we did one with Headworks, we did one with Biosolids. In terms of coordination, we do have a lot of work going on in our constructability report that was tabled with the province last year. We do talk about or highlight that we have these major projects happening. There's a couple other projects, as Cynthia mentioned, the other ancillary projects. There's a lot of construction that's going to overlap in time and space in the next few years there. And we do have some work in terms of actual coordination with direct coordination with some of the projects that are being seen for that.
Yeah, and we actually are in the process of hiring like an interface manager. So this will be a position whose main purpose really is to look cross project at everything at the north end and look at how these different projects interact in terms of things like plant shutdowns. So which parts of the plant need to get shut down for different tie-ins to happen, and how do we make sure that we don't ever compromise our actual treatment process, because this is a active treatment plant we're working in. They'll look at things like coordinating laydown areas, which is where different contractors are storing their supplies, because it's a tight space that we'll be working in, and how all these different things that seem simple, like maybe how a construction vehicle is going to move around the plant, can get very tricky when you have your active plant operations and then multiple construction sites going on. So that's it's very important, and we did realize that's a gap. So it's something that we're in the process now that we're moving to 2 and 3. It's easier when there's one, but with 2 and 3, we need somebody to.
You also asked about capacity, like in terms of resourcing. I know that we can. I don't want to speak to it, but like I said, we did have an external audit look at the whole program. That will come back with recommendations, and some of that will be reflected in this recommendation.
Very good, Mr. Chair. I'm new, so this may be obvious to others, but how is the determination made, and what is the importance administratively between a project and an ancillary project?
Yeah, that's probably something more that a word we're using internally. So the project is really like the main Headworks upgrade. So that's our big design build contract. But there's a few other smaller contracts that we'll award separately that form, are still required to do the overall Headworks upgrade. So we're calling those.
Or like sub-projects?
Kind of, yes. Yeah, it's not our main contractor.
Are they required, or are they also opportunistic?
Yes. So like the UV upgrades, we do need to upgrade the ultraviolet. The primary clarifiers need upgrading. So these are required, all part of our license compliance, but not part of that main design build. So sometimes we separate.
Like I'm thinking about like coordinating underwater lines, for example. When we're doing major road reconstructions, that would be opportunistic, right?
Yeah, no, a lot of this is end of life stuff, end of life replacement of equipment. But I guess, there are I'd say interim FOSS, for example. So the interim FOSS project, a change to the overall project delivery plan, but there's a long-term that infrastructure we can use as part of our long-term solution. So some of that, like the piping we ran for miles in there, is somewhat opportunistic in terms of what we use it for in the long term. But I'd say that generally, this is end of life and it's just smaller, direct contracts with different contractors outside this design build consortium we have for Edwards.
I was just gonna maybe add that sometimes it makes sense instead of having a lot of big or a lot of little projects and wrapped in. To minimize our risk, we might take this project, which may need a specialty contractor, and we'll award it as a separate contract so that it's not being absorbed within the bigger contract. So these ancillary ones, they're usually $20 to $30 million projects.
But
They're smaller, yes.
specifically there, so we have design mid build was a major project, and so the ancillaries are specifically subcontracted works.
They're not contracted, it's just not part, so our contractor for Headworks is Red River Partners, Red Solutions, I'm sorry, there's Red River Biosolids Partners is for the second one, so I was getting confused. So these other projects, we're just gonna put them out as a separate contract, a separate award. It's not part of the big one.
Yes. Like it's a separate contract with a separate designer that we're managing, but not, it's part of the same.
Okay, use the wrong word, it's not subcontract.
It's not a subcontract,
new
it's its own contract.
It's coming out of the same capital budget.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And for reporting purposes, so it's part of.
It's part of this,
So
yes, it is part of the overall upgrades, yeah.
We're talking $30 million. We don't want a separate one. Okay,
It's like because the large numbers are hard to understand in the first place. And we have a really, really big number with everything.
Yes.
Okay, and then I wonder about a different presentation where it would be all of the smaller projects.
It is included in this report.
But as you said, it's all related to
It is.
main projects, so it makes sense. Yeah, to bundle them. No, I'll move this. So let's probably.
okay, no further debate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. New pitch biosolids.
So on to project 2, biosolids, so you can run it.
Okay, Tim stole my thunder by mentioning we started with the chartering session. I was gonna say, it feels like a real, it's kicked off already, but
Sure.
now we have like a physical something to say we've done, nice checkbox. So, that was really exciting because, you see everybody in the same room, like all these designers and the contractors and the amount of knowledge. And it's really, from my owner perspective, it's really comforting to see everybody there and realizing we're all here for the same purpose and we're committing, right? We're making a commitment to see this to the end and to work collaboratively together. So it was really exciting. And for this project, biosolids, so that's the second project, and we've spent 1.3 million in this reporting phase. The schedule right now is still, we're saying at the end of 2030. As we move forward through this development phase with Red River Biosolids Partners, we will be able to delineate that schedule a little more and give something a bit more firm once we get through this initial design phase. So in this quarter, in the actual reporting quarter, we did select the partner, and then subsequent to this reporting phase, we executed the development phase agreement. We, with our owner's advocate, which is AECOM, we extended another contract with them to take us through the next phase of, I'm trying not to say the word phase, through the next portion of this work, through the development side of the project. We also posted some early works projects. So there's a few projects that, to minimize the overall risk to the project and to schedule, we put out earlier. So that includes things like getting the water mains in and some land drainage sewers. So those are the things that we're able to start with earlier. We also have continued services with a number of our support contracts, like Veritas advisor, legal advisors. And I had mentioned the audit report in Headworks, so that applies to this one as well. There were no new risks that were identified in this reporting period. The main risk to this project still remains funding. So right now our ISIP funding is based on the previous cost estimate of 552 million, which leaves 483 that has yet to have an identified funding pool, for lack of a better word. And, for now, we will be looking at funding that through rates, but we are actively trying to find some additional external federal provincial funding for that. Anything you want to mention about the funding?
The currently approved water and sewer rates do not include they assumed some additional funding from other levels of government. We're obviously that funding hasn't materialized to date, so we're working on a rate adjustment to reflect a different funding plan. So that's coming in the next few months.
Any follow-up questions? I'll move this one. Somebody want to move this one? So Arlico, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Supec.
Yes. Something.
Groundhog Day feels like.
So that we can go some water there. The plant is at least we are in license spec for performance, but we are still working on closing out all the aspects of the project. So,
You stole my thunder again.
sorry.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The boss.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll let Tim give all the good news, but I'll reiterate it anyway.
It's bad news. It's like,
Yeah,
Oh, whoops.
no, I'm really, really, really happy to say we are in full license compliance with our south end.
Great.
So, we've been here a number of times. We shared a lot of information and, it's always good when we can share very exciting information. So this is great. We are still working towards the finish line. We're not done, but it feels good to know that we're in compliance now with our license and that we have moved to biological phosphorus at this plant. So we only have to use our chemical as polishing on some occasions. So that's really exciting for us. So in terms of other things you're interested in financially, we've spent 4.5 million in this reporting period, and we've closed another 4 appeals. So this leaves us with 4 open appeals. So that's good. We started, I think, with something that was over 100, and we're down to 4 appeals. We're working really hard to be collaborative with the contractor and work towards resolution. We did have 2 over expenditures approved in this reporting period. First was just over about $1.5 million for consulting support services, and another $1 million for an external legal contract. I already mentioned a bit in terms of schedule that we are still working towards finishing up the project and hoping to reach substantial completion mid next year, somewhere around there. In the last report, I did mention that we had specified a piece of equipment called a rotary drum thickener, which really what it does is it takes the water out of the sewage so that you're dealing with more sludge. We had specified those, and what was delivered was half capacity. So that put us in a pinch where we had to install insufficient equipment for what we had requested. The good news is we now have both of the properly sized ones installed. So they were a bit of a long lead item. We got them in. They are installed and testing is ongoing for those. So that's a risk that we've been able to mitigate. Let me see, other key updates is we've begun commissioning the fermenters and the odor control processes. We're finishing up the repairs on some of our BNR mixers. And like I mentioned, we are working with the vendor to continue to resolve deficiencies. It's a little slow going at times, I won't lie, but we're determined and I know we're gonna get there. In terms of risks, sorry, I mentioned actually the repairs are in this report. It will speak to the repairs for the BNR mixers that is currently underway. That has since been finished, so that one's taken care of. And in other good news is we did have our federal and provincial funding agreement that was set to expire at the end of the year, but we were able to work with the other levels of government, and that is now sorted out, and we're able to continue our submissions for that project. So that funding is not at risk. And I believe I have covered everything else off.
Part of the theme of today's meeting seems to be growth, and everything we hear about is growth. 30,000 new Winnipeggers, and South Winnipeg is.
Yeah.
Again, I think one of the delegations said some stuff that may have been incorrect, but could you give us some background? Like, what was the capacity of this plant prior to construction? What is the capacity of the new plant, and how much of that capacity is being used on a regular basis right now?
Yeah, so the primary driver for this was regulatory upgrade, not to create new net new capacity, right? So the plant before the upgrades, it was able to process 150 megaliters a day, so 150 units, right? It's and we had primary and secondary treatment. Yeah. Yeah. So following the upgrades, we added tertiary treatment. So now we've added a higher level of cleaning, and we've increased our plant capacity to 420 units. And so
That's a big jump.
yeah. So what it does is it's letting us. So the main stream. It hasn't changed, right? So our primary stream, what we're putting through is the same, but what we're doing more of now is working with wet weather flow. So when you get the flush of wet weather, instead of it bypassing certain aspects of the plant, it's now going through something that we call a high rate clarifier, which is, imagine just a box and it goes in and you add some chemicals and it spins out and clean water sort of magically comes out. So it's you wouldn't want to use it for your everyday plant process because it uses more chemical and it's not as efficient. So it's sort of it's the thing we're going to use when those big storms come in, send a bunch of water in, and then Tim's going to say it much better than I am.
No, that's that.
That's okay.
Oh, makes sense.
Nice, you're learning.
Just a reminder, it's just a reminder, like the we talk about 150 to 420 or whatever. You have to remember that the flow coming into the plant changes a lot when it rains. Like, I know that sounds obvious and people know that, but I mean, like, it could be 5, it could be 10 times the flow. Like, it's a huge wet weather flow is orders of magnitude larger than dry weather flow. So when a plant is sized for a certain flow and handling day-to-day stuff, and every now and a couple times a year there's a big storm and it has to be diverted or load shedded or this kind of thing. It's part of the regulatory upgrade to be able to treat basically larger storms. That's why you get the big jump in these numbers in 150 to 50, and why there's a use of different equipment to handle these giant surges of flow because you have to treat it faster. So the it's a high rate of sewage, a high rate clarifier. So it's for that. And as Cynthia mentioned, you can't use it all the time because it's not effective because 99% of the time you don't have a storm. It's you're treating it normally. So I just for context, when we talk about these hydraulic capacities, these peak flows are way bigger than a normal.
And if we had the separated, more of the separated.
Yeah.
That wouldn't impact it, right? Like
That's one of the biggest arguments for the economic arguments for treatment from the treatment plant perspective. The less extra flow you need to treat, the extra, even though it's watered down in a storm, but it's volume. So the more you can, intercept and divert, let rainwater go to the river, let the sewage go to the plant, then you don't have to upsize these plants as much.
I can't imagine what cities do that don't have a river that have to deal with this. And sometimes those, what do they do?
Lagoons,
Oh, the lagoons?
lagoon,
Pretty much every city has some kind of waterway they discharge to. I would think.
So,
Water flows down at some point to the sea.
so where are we in terms of like its utilization? Like, well, is there a wall, like, we know we're up to 5 or 6 years of capacity at the North End plant. What does it look like in South Winnipeg?
No, that's a good question. I don't have the numbers offhand. It's always hard to say because you could get one industrial development
Right.
that eats up all the capacity, or you can have, 5-6 years of continued growth. We do know that in the next, I apologize, I don't have the number offhand. Handful of
Save it
years.
for next time, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's something that's on our radar
Sure.
and something we're aware of and we will be looking at.
Selfless,
Sure.
Which is,
there's also an issue with, we want to plan ahead of, getting the sewage to the plant. The Southwest Interceptor, project is on the books, because that could be a choke point in the future. Not necessarily in the treatment end, but just getting it to the plant side, and that's.
right.
Yes.
When does that project start?
That 20, I think, it's in design right now. Construction, I believe, is to start 2026, 2027.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. Yeah, and it's a very good one for the city as well. It'll remove a single point of failure for us.
Good. Okay, so that,
But just on I don't know how many times I've heard the words provincial environmental license. I just tried to find it. I've got something from 2022. Is there a comprehensive text of consolidated document?
Each of our treatment plants has an Environment Act license. And I know it's on our website, but I can certainly send you the link. So each of them will have a different license. I can
Okay.
send you that.
I guess another question, just in terms of clear water, are there requirements? I think I've asked the director this before, probably answered. Are there requirements in terms of what is to be released outside of phosphorus and nitrogen?
Yes, we do have a number of requirements. That would include like ammonia, we've got E. coli, total suspended solids, there's
I'm thinking more things like bismuth or like salts and things that you wouldn't see. No.
but I cannot.
We do report on metals.
But do we check? Do we check what goes up periodically? I know we check our drinking water.
Yes.
I don't know how much we use
Yes,
checking
there's,
our.
there's
They
all
have
sorts of, yes.
Compliance online.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
would, I can get you, forward you the compliance reporting. We do reporting on effluent, but also river monitoring, at different points in the river, not just at the old falls.
I'd be interested in that.
So, yeah, I can, we do publish online. I'll find it for you.
Yeah, I know there's some nasty things that we can't see. Antimony comes to mind. Anyway, okay, and then wasn't there the other question? I can't find the word, but is there a byproduct from the biosolid process that is then saleable?
So.
It's got a fancy name and then.
Aquaterra, the struvite,
Struvite.
struvite, yeah.
Okay, so do we have that now?
No, that will be part of our biosolids upgrade at the North End plant.
Okay, do we have any idea how much we might have? Do we sell this stuff?
I mean, we're still looking at what the market might be. It's not a money maker,
No, okay.
right? That's not the intent. It's not a cost recovery type of product. If that's.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
okay, thank you very much. So do you want to move this one?
Sure.
Counselor Orlico, I think.
Yeah, that's why I sat here. The most.
Simon first. Okay, all's in favor? That's carried. Water meter renewals.
Yes, so I will do my best not to steal any thunder here. We've got Ms. Lucy Smorak, manager of finance, and as we do our project manager on this project. I mean, I'm a big believer in this project. Very excited about this project. I think this is a very good project for the department and for our customers. Just as a preamble, like the it's got a positive business case. It's going to help us modernize our meters. Replace a lot of aging meters in town, get better meter accuracy and really increase the level of customer service, really an order of magnitude increase in customer service with the ability to proactively, the utility can make the meter readings for you, and contact you when there's anomalies, this kind of stuff. So I'm very excited about this project, but I will turn it over to the folks here that are delivering it to cover the milestones in the last reporting period.
Any questions for these guys, or did you guys have a chance to review the report? Do we need a?
I'm wondering, like, a very technical question, but why are we using microwaves instead of like other frequencies?
So we're not using microwave frequencies, we're using it as comparative.
How is it comparative? Okay.
Yes, so the AMI transmitters are a much lower frequency and much lower power frequency as well than a microwave would be. It's closer to like a vapor monitor for the power and the frequency that they're on.
So it's like more like Wi-Fi, or is it more like radio?
Less than Wi-Fi, similar to radio.
Okay, all right. That sounds non-ionizing to me.
The other thing, well, and this is all Health Canada compliant, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah, but just something that also gets lost in the mix, like the idea that this remote, meter reading device, isn't necessarily, it's not continuously broadcasting, right? Like depending on how we set them up or what actual model we get, typically they're intermittently send a signal out. Is it once a day? Is it like it's logging the information? It's recording information, but the data capture to us it's not constant. It's not live streamed all the time, so it's not actually broadcasting on those frequencies continuously. That's true.
And how's it captured?
So there's data collectors that will be set up throughout the city, and those will be listening all the time. So they'll be listening for the broadcasts that come from the transmitters that are attached to the water meters.
Interesting. Can we double them up and like offer free internet to Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Unfortunately not.
No? Okay.
I'm not sure if you're gonna get to it. But it's been around for a while. I remember when it first popped up and we got quite a few concerns from certain people about having this in their home. And I believe there was an option, or we're looking at an option that they can pay not to have the service, and then we do the manual. Can you give me a background on that?
We do have a report back to council on, we did an initial, information report on what other cities do or what kind of options could be for an opt-out program. Because most cities don't offer an opt-out program, but some do for a fee to recover the cost. But we do have a follow-up report to this order. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just got one more technical follow-up. All right. How far are the receiving stations from the signal sending stations? Maybe a mean and I don't know.
Depending on the technology, because there's different types of technology, but these data collectors can be set up about 3 miles away from the transmitters themselves.
And then how much power are the transmitters using?
1 watt.
1 watt.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's very little power being sent. They turn on, they send their signal, and then they turn off just for battery conservation.
Okay.
I never really heard any of that in all the noise that was happening in the first round. Was that discussed when all of this came forward? Because there was a lot of people worked up about it. It was discussed?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, that's something we should discuss more.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe in your opt-out report, you can talk about it more, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, I think most people that are concerned, for example, of relating to cell phone towers, they're more worried about other things that are Health Canada questions. They're not City of Winnipeg questions. That's been my experience.
Somebody want to move this one?
Okay, I'll move it.
Thanks, Councilor Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. The old soldier taxation relief report. One person applies for this.
Yes, and we're gonna have two people talk to it. So Tim Austin and Tanis Yanchishan from Taxation are joining us to discuss this one and the next one also.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
I think this report will be relatively quick. This report is just for information regarding the successful application for the Soldiers Tax Relief Program. It's administered by the province and funded by the province of Manitoba. The credit is received and is applied directly to the property tax account for the successful applicant. We only have one this year. We haven't had very many over the last number of years. The Soldiers Taxation Relief Act requires City Council to annually approve applications for the assistance. And once we get that, we bill the province and we get the money back and we apply it to the tax account. The credit, it's $50. It's a long standing amount of $50.
There'd be a way of like fixing this.
That why we here?
Like to honor the, I don't know, honor the
It's a
the credit, but not have to go through this.
It's the province of Manitoba
Tried this, I just.
funding and administration, so it's built into their act of steps that happen.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna change the act.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just seems like, it just seems like a lot of work for something.
Moves this all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right.
For $50, we'll move it. Yeah.
Number 9.
How many administrative hours are on for that?
Authorization, over expenditure.
What?
Not often.
Yes, we're here, the Assessment Taxation Department is requesting approval to overexpend its adopted operating expenditures up to just under $1.4 million. The increase in operating expenditures is due to estimated appeal losses, which is recorded and kind of held in a contingency called our appeal allowance liability account, as well as higher anticipated costs. These costs are offset by department savings and additional revenue. As a result, the department requires an appropriation of $780,000.
So what's the appeal liability over expenditure? What is that?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in a second, Counselor, if that's okay. So it is our normal practice for our department to set aside potential liability and losses due to assessment appeals at our municipal board or the Court of King's Bench. During our in-year review, the department revised the total potential impacts of estimated appeal losses and risk. That's higher than $8.4 million. We have asked for this over expenditure, but we've also come up with a 3-year plan to get the liability back to where it needs to be. We only incur the actual loss if we lose the appeal or if the appellant is successful in their case. And it's paid out when that is done, and we actually have the order either from the municipal board or the King's Bench. So, sorry, back to your question, Councillor.
I think a question.
I think, I don't know if I answered it as part of that or not. I just want to confirm with Councillor.
Mr. Chair, do we have through you to the public service, do we have analytics on which appeals we lose? I mean, my understanding is essentially there's a lobby, and it's like, if we're talking about property appeals?
Property assessment appeals, yes.
Right, so there's like a lobby or people that have like professional.
Appealants.
They have a job to do this.
Right,
and
correct.
So those who have the money to pay the people who can do this work have a very good chance to get their assessments lowered. And if I recall correctly, if you appeal, chances are that it's going to go down. Either stay the same or go down. It very rarely does it go up, if at all. So
yeah, there are tax
mitigate this.
Yeah, there are tax agents in the city of Winnipeg. Every property owner has the right to file a property assessment appeal.
Yeah.
What we've done a lot in prior years is try to educate people of how assessments are determined, providing a lot of information, for example, residential property owners, sales comparisons and comparable properties, so they can review and do their homework prior to filing an application at the Board of Revision. There's 2 levels. There's different levels of appeal. These losses are related to the second level appeal at the Municipal Board of King's Bench. So they've gone past the board revision, which is a different level. This is the first level of appeal.
Okay, so
So
these
these
are
are
like-
second, so people are progressing.
These are more expensive.
Well, not necessarily. There is risk there. It depends on the properties that are being filed, appeal being filed on. The risk varies from property or property type, depending on the information that the property owner has, right? And we budget for that risk based on historical tax losses that are related to the reduction in assessment. So we try to mitigate that risk through the budget process and allowing and setting up an appeal liability account.
Something about it makes feel like a game. You know, you want to reduce your property assessment come municipal tax time, but you want to tell CRA it's worth, this much when it comes to write-offs. But anyway.
Okay,
Good enough.
go ahead. That's all.
Question, so I see, so one, maybe I'm wrong, I'm sure I am. So we have appeals, we're losing more. I'm assuming a little bit of that is due to the fact that we don't have enough staff who are doing proper assessments. I'm assuming that it's our staff obviously are assessing, best of their ability. I guess the first question is not be so ending story is, do we have enough people to do all the assessments that we need to do?
I will say I would always love more people. I will say that I'll answer it like that. Over the years, our number of staff complement has not changed. Even though the city has grown and there's more properties. So we have the same amount of people who valuation staff who assign value, inspect properties, support our values at the board, at either the board revision, municipal board, or the courts. So we have the same amount of staff equivalent to do the same amount or a little bit more work. Whether or not that impacts, I don't believe that impacts our ability to support our values at the board, municipal board, King's Bench, or the board of revision.
At the assessment part itself.
At the assessment, yes.
Like the actually people go out there assess the property. We have enough of those people to give you, or are they running around so fast that they're missing a basement or they're missing whatever?
Councillor, we're extremely busy. Our department is very busy. We rely on permits to tell us what's been done, what type of work has been done. That allows us to, and that cues us up to go and inspect properties, applications themselves. Prior to getting to appeals, we enter into conversations with a lot of property owners trying to resolve any issues that they may have based on updated property attributes that they bring to us.
So decades ago, my father's a real estate appraiser. Province of Manitoba had something inherently wrong in the way they determined the value of multifamily residential properties. He was out of Brandon and kept signing up more people that wanted their assessments appealed because they found out this was an error, and obviously that error ended up costing the municipalities outside of Winnipeg an awful lot of money because
Now that's super cheap though.
I mean,
I don't know. I have
so
developers telling me.
So it's been a while since I've seen an over expenditure in the, or normally at budget time we find pickups in the assessment liability pot because we're conservative in case there is a problem. This is quite the opposite trend. Is there something that was done incorrectly or types of appeals that are becoming a problem?
No, there's nothing, in my opinion, done incorrectly with our assessments at all. Our staff do a very good job of ensuring that we have the right property attributes and calculating assessments correctly. These are challenges based on legislation. We've seen a lot of appeals associated with the Municipal Assessment Act and looking at specific parts of that act. That has provided a bit of a challenge to us, and those are currently in the court. We don't have control over the timing of what's in the court, so every year it goes on, the liability grows.
That's relevant.
Okay, so we have staff working very hard. Complement's the same. We got the municipal board adding another layer of costs onto us, which we'd love, maybe we'll talk about that another day about getting that number broken out for us a bit. So we can say, get rid of this municipal board, please. If that's the way we want to go. But I'm not going to there for today. So what I am to the report you have.
Mm-hmm.
So in the report, your mitigation your mitigation methodology here for the next couple of years, it was, I think I read, was quite a significant hit on the number of staff you're going to have. Like, you're going to reduce your staff complement by I don't know how many it was, but explain that to me.
No, I don't.
No,
Lots of
we're not
that.
reducing the staff complement, we're offsetting it by the over expenditure with salary savings that we've already achieved from having vacancies in our positions that occur naturally as turnover
Give
happens.
you a target, and they don't, maybe not naturally, but we give you a target vacancy management. like
For,
that.
for an example, I'll just elaborate a bit too. We have a senior assessor who makes a certain amount of money, retires, and the person that comes in to fill the job is paid
Okay.
in the first step instead of step 5 and with the collective bargaining agreement. So there's salary savings there. Those things help accumulate over time and within year, and that provides our salary savings that we've highlighted in
Generally,
the report.
the approach you're taking and where you're mitigating this and how you're getting it is retirements. People who got paid a lot, like police, we get that kind of bonus once in a while when all the police officers go at 55, and then drops down because cadets are cheaper. And then also you're doing it through by continuing the vacancy management. So we're not going to have a large impact on reducing staffing levels. That's what I'm hearing.
Our goal is not to reduce any staffing levels at all.
That's what I want to mention.
In fact, we are still trying to hire more people and bring them into the department to be a full complement. We're not quite there yet, but we're continuing to work on that.
Look, thank you.
Good. Someone ready to move this on?
Just-
Yes, what
Or
more?
like just anecdotally, word on the street is you can sell your house for more than it's been assessed at with the city of Winnipeg. Like, aren't we bullish on assessments because we end up at Board of Revision and then at the Court of Communis bench? Because I mean, that seems to be the common theme with realtors is you almost always sell more
Well,
than with your assessments.
And I hope that's the case. And there's a reason for that, Counselor. A property assessment is retrospective. So our reference date, for example, for 2025, which is our next general assessment, is based on what you could sell your property. What we believe you could sell your property for as of April 1st, 2023. So if you're going to sell your house at today's date, the market has grown, the market has changed.
Right.
And we're looking back at a specific date and time, not as of today. So any sales and any market changes within that two-year period, which is a general assessment, will be caught in the next reassessment. And we change the reference date from April 1st, 2023 to April 1st, 2025. So there is going to be some fluctuation there, right? If we're bang on and you sell your house April 1st and we think your house is 350,000 and you sell it for 365, that's awesome. And we'll catch that at the next date. But as the time goes on, there's adjustments for time of sale as well as there's changes in the real estate market.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Someone want to move this one?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Lutz. All's in favor? Opposed, carried. We've dealt with report 10. Thank you very much. Thank you. Financial status and forecast report to September 30th, 2024.
Okay, and to speak to that is our corporate controller, John Swedell.
Good afternoon, everybody. So Lutz,
Would you let's go?
we'll just go. Late game tonight. Maybe a nap.
Fair enough.
Okay, so thank you, Tracy. I'll now take the committee through the highlights of the financial status report for the period ended September 30th, 2024. The September report shows an increase to the forecasted operating deficit of $4.2 million up to $23.4 million in the tax-supported general revenue fund, or 1.7% over budget. So one thing I looked at, Chair Barati, is kind of giving people a reference point, right? Because we're talking about large numbers. So if you had a household income of about $75,000, that deficit would be like $1,275. So that's kind of the reference point I'd like to kind of point out. The forecasted deficit in Q3 is primarily made up of $13.1 million in fire paramedic services, and this is primarily due to overtime and worker compensation costs. This is a slight increase over our Q2 forecast of $200,000. $13 million in public works, primarily due to snow and ice clearing costs, and this is another slight increase of $900,000 over Q2. I was going to say about $2.2 million Winnipeg Police Services, but we just heard from the chief. Just they're looking at making that zero, so that's good news. There was also delays in implementing the proposed 911 fees. That's our reduction in our revenue by $3.7 million. And our property planning and development had forecasted a $5.1 million lower than budgeted regulation revenue. So that's our permits and subdivision application fees. And that was $2.5 million back in Q2. So these shortfalls were offset by the elimination of their transfer to the FSR. That was a $15.4 million adjustment. A deferral of debt costs. So we see a $6.8 million increase from that, or savings from that, I should say, and higher interest earned on short-term investments. So that's about 10.9 million over budget, which has been great to see. So if you look at Schedule 2, that provides a great breakdown of what makes up the deficit. And then Schedule 3 provides you a breakdown of what has transpired since their last forecast to this forecast. So as everybody is aware, the Financial Stabilization Reserve was drawn down by $2 million in Q3 to cover shortfalls in taxation revenue, leaving $14.3 million available to cover the deficit in the General Revenue Fund. This will leave the FSR fully depleted with the remaining $9.1 million deficit to be addressed with the 2025 budget and additional savings in Q4. As noted in the report, snow clearing costs are forecasted at budget and actuals could exceed this amount. We're also implementing a new Public Standards Accounting Board accounting standard that should have a positive impact on our revenue and the General Revenue Fund. It's mentioned in the report. So thank you, Chair Barati. That concludes my report.
Question? Bite. So with the fiscal, bottom line, you're planning to, I'm not sure if I'll be going through the budget process this time, but you indicated that we're going to take $9 million of pretty well our whole and just take that whole and pass it on to the next year. That doesn't sound like a balanced budget. How are we squaring that off?
Well, the budget itself is balanced, so that deficit that we've ended up this year that we can't bounce then becomes part of the balancing act for 2025. So the 2025 budget will be balanced, which will basically include $9.1 million more on your revenue side than on your expenses in order to cover this deficit.
Right.
Charter requires us to deal with it in the following year. We have to have a plan for the deficit
That's the
the next
FSR,
year.
which
Yeah.
we haven't had a plan for a couple of years, but regardless, I'm just trying to figure out this $9 million. That we're passing that on to the next year's
That's the
budget.
General Revenue Fund, what
Yeah.
Tracy was referring to.
General Revenue Fund, right?
An unfunded deficit.
So the 9%, the $9 million, that's cash. That's what we need to fill up. Will be had that extra $9 million somehow magical and no other cost of pressures. When we paid it off this year as part of the $14 million, which we usually do, right? We usually always pay off that shortfall. We have one within that calendar year.
Yes.
Yeah, we usually had the FSR to cover whatever shortfalls we had, but through the COVID years, right, with the additional $250 million of expenses that we saw, we've depleted
So
that.
we're gonna move the 9 million. Again, I still don't understand how that's balanced.
Let's go back to my analogy as far as like household income,
Sure.
right? So in this case here, we've got $1,275 rung up on our credit card. So that's the debt that we're carrying over that we don't have any money this year to pay for. So what we're gonna do next year is we're gonna use our money next year to pay off that credit card. So we gotta spend less next year. So that's
Accounted for in the 2025 budget
So we're
process.
kind of just making a first call on the 2025 budget of $9 million.
Yes.
Okay, that makes, have we ever done that before?
No.
No, that's just horrible. We're gonna have a hard year next year, we know it. So we're even gonna start it even further in the hole, but I'll leave that to Councilor Bawadi and the budget working group to work their magic through. I understand, it's just what it is, but I just want to clarify that. So it is legally okay because it's debt and we're just moving over like we have debt all the time, like when we borrow stuff.
and deficit.
Yeah, so, and then we still have to figure out how to fill up the SSA again, Jeff. I'll be having that nap, he won't. But bottom line is we're doing the first call on the next year's budget of $9 million.
Yes.
Which is a very unusual, a practice we've never done before.
New territory.
And the $9 million is our forecast as of Q3, right? So
It's gonna be 7 now because we just have.
just picked up 2.2. I've already written that one down.
Okay, I just took in my head around, I read it and that's going, that just seems unbalanced. Okay, but it's debt, that's why, it's not cash, it's not cash. Where it's kind of cash, but it's not cash. I got it. It's debt. I got it. Okay, fair enough. That makes, I'm not sure, but I definitely don't like it, but it makes sense.
Well, I mean, like, there have been a number of things that we've done over the last many years that we pushed problems down the road and.
Like, oh, capital, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Capital projects we push, sometimes to balance things off.
No, what I'm saying is like in terms of, like, you know we don't budget enough for snow. We, transit tells us that this is where the
Fair
road's
enough.
gonna be and we say, no, you're gonna have $5 million more than that. This year we took the cost of, garbage off the tax supported bill and put it on the utility without a funding source for it. So there's a
Right.
whole number of odd.
We're just adding another one.
Well, this is sort of a culmination of all of it. So this is the result of all of those, of all those things.
Sure, fair enough, I got you.
And, these things have come to roost. I mean, it's,
Yeah, it always does,
keeping track,
things like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the defense to the budget working group, though, they have been making some steps, like snow, for example, they had added an additional $3 million last year.
Sure, but the
It's
contract
just-
all came back at 50%,
Yeah.
massive increase.
I got, no, I'm not gonna get into the budget stuff and stuff like that, I'm trying to square that off my head, but you answered me properly, but I still don't like it, I understand why,
I
got it. Thank you.
I mean, to that. How much could this type of method be stretched if? Like if council were so willing, like how far could this number get?
Well, there's no quantum that it can allow, but we have to be able to resolve an unfunded deficit within the next fiscal year as part of our charter. So it's our ability and capability to be able to pull that off.
Right.
I would say whatever that is.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay, so do you want to move this one?
No.
Thank you, Counselor. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Counselor, how about consent adjournment? You want to do that one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Orlando. Consent adjournment, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you, everybody.